Hi everyone, this is Anna with scrapping, stamping, and stuff.com. I have an important question for you today. If you are a paper crafter, this is a really important question. Do you have a love-hate relationship with your paper trimmer? If you do, you should listen in and watch what I'm going to share with you here. I'm going to share with you some things about the Stampin' Up! Paper trimmer, which is fantastic. I'm going to call this thing a powerhouse of a tool. You can do this is by far the best paper trimmer I've ever used. If you have a paper trimmer that you don't love, you should rethink why you're using it. So I'm going to share with you 10 of the reasons that I love this trimmer. So let's get started. Number one, I can use this one tool for cutting with this blade and scoring with this blade. I know some people who label these. You could take a Sharpie marker and label them to help you remember which one is which if you have a hard time. But here, I'm going to take my full sheet of cardstock, cut it in half with that blade, and I can score it with the scoring blade, and I am ready to fold that card base in half and get started on a project. So, one reason I love it, you can cut and score with the same tool. Number two, these blades are removable and replaceable. It may sound like common sense that every trimmer should have replaceable blades, but I was trying to help a friend recently with one who, yeah, you could not get those blades off to replace them, which is silly. That is just ridiculous. So if you pull these down here to the bottom and you get them lined up right in this little groove, they should pop out of there. If I get it in the right spot. There we go. And then you could take your new one and pop it right back in there. So that is great that these blades are replaceable. We have straight edges both at the top and the bottom to push your paper up against. So depending on what you're working on, sometimes it's handier to keep something down here at the bottom. These are really nice, big, tall, straight edges that you can press your paper up against to make sure it's nice and straight. My fourth reason I love this thing is that it has a grid across the whole surface, which is very, very helpful when you're trying to make sure that you have something lined up straight. Number five, not only do we have a full grid, but this has a huge surface. It has a 12.5-inch range from top to bottom. When you fold this arm out, it has 14.5 inches that you can measure across this distance. So this is perfect for scrapbooking as well as making cards. Before I forget to mention it, I also love, this is a bonus reason I love it, this doesn't count as one of my 10, is we have this ruler on the arm that lifts up that makes it really easy. If you only want to cut a certain distance, if you don't want to cut all the way from top to bottom, you only want to cut a certain distance, it makes it nice to measure that distance. And this one is a bit folded up, but this was the card base I was working on the other day where I only wanted to cut from here down to the bottom. I didn't want to cut the whole thing. So that makes it really nice. You can measure that you're starting at 1/2 inch, put your blade down, make your cut down to 8 is where I was cutting to, and lift it up, and then you still have the pieces that are attached at the top and the bottom. So those measurements on, I'm going to call this the cutting arm. I don't know if that's right or not. Those are really nice. Moving on, we're at reason number 6. I love this thing. Not only do you have fun features on the front, we have fun features on the back. My first two aren't really terribly exciting, but it has this little foot back here that you can pop up. If you're traveling, you want to keep it popped down to make sure you don't break it. But that makes sure that it stays level and isn't rocking back and forth when you're cutting it. Honestly, mine normally stays folded down and I don't really have much of a problem with it rocking, so you can test it out and go both ways. We also have the anti-skid feet, which are helpful. Nobody wants their trimmer scooting around on them when you're trying to cut. Number 7, which you can see here, is this handy little storage box. Got 2 little pieces here. You push in and it lifts up. And you can store all kinds of stuff in here. You can store, I've got a bone folder, piercing tool, some extra blades, because you always want to keep some of them on hand to make sure you don't end up with dull blades right in the middle of the project. So you can keep all kinds of stuff in there and take it to go if you're going to craft with a friend or at a retreat for the weekend and have that stuff right in the back of it. Number 8, reason I love it is I usually do not have to move anything to do my cutting. I know with narrower trimmers, a lot of times I would have to lift out the arm attachment to be able to measure something for a card. With this one, for card making, I rarely have to do that because usually I'm not measuring past about 4 or 5.5 inches. So usually I don't have to open it up, so it's all ready to go. I don't have to be fidgeting around and moving pieces and parts to get ready to cut something. Number 9, this little arm that lifts, it actually has a lock on it up here. If I press it to the right, it has locked it shut. So when I'm traveling with this, nobody wants this arm flailing around with the blade moving up and down. It could cut things, could get ripped off if it pops up. So you can lock that blade in place and keep it where it needs to be. If you have small children around, that's another benefit. If you're worried about anybody getting small fingers into a blade and getting cut, you can always keep that locked. And even though this does lift up, of course, this is probably going to sound silly, but I'll tell you anyway. My absolute favorite thing about this is a lot of times I'm making a lot of cards at the same time. I may be making 10 or 50 of the same card, depending on the situation. And something I absolutely love about this, if you're trying to do a lot of cutting really fast, is, if you notice, I can just slide my paper. Oh, it's going to be tricky on me now. I can slide my paper in here, cut, slide it out, slide another one back in, cut from the bottom of the top, and I don't even have to lift this arm up. It just slides right under there. This really thick cardstock is being a little bit tricky on me. Let me grab... Here's another piece of cardstock I have here. If you notice, that just slides right under. And I don't even have to lift that. So when I'm doing a lot of cuts, usually the same cut over and over again, that saves a lot of time that I don't have to lift this up. I can slide it right in, cut, slide it right in and cut. So those are 10 plus reasons I absolutely love this trimmer. If you need a new trimmer, if you don't love your trimmer, I highly encourage you to go online on my online store and check this out. I'm going to put a link in my the video description so that you can go to my blog and check this out and order straight from my website. Thanks, everyone.